Hello, everyone. This is Jeff Rumberg. I'm a managing partner with MetricNet, and today I want to talk about right-sizing the technician headcount for your desktop support or field service organization. MetricNet has developed a downloadable desktop support headcount calculator, and in a moment I'm going to go through a demonstration of that headcount calculator. But before I do that, let me give a little bit of background on this question. We are asked almost every day, what headcount should I have in desktop support? Or what headcount should I have in field services? And generally the question is framed in terms of the number of end users. I've got 1,000 end users. What should my desktop support headcount be? Or I've got 2,500 end users. How many field support techs do I need? Those questions have a premise built in that assumes that the headcount in desktop support and field services should be based on the number of users you're supporting. But that turns out to be a fallacy because different user groups produce different workloads. We've seen, for example, 1,000 user environments that are supported perfectly well with 4 desktop support technicians. Conversely, we've seen 1,000 end user support environments that require as many as 40 or even 50 desktop support technicians. So the question is not how many users you have, but rather the workload generated by those users. And that is going to be a function of the vertical market that you work in, the extent that you have virtualized and standardized your desktop environment. It's a function of a lot of different things. So don't be thinking end users drive technician headcount. That's not the case. It's workload that drives technician headcount, and that's why we've created the downloadable desktop support headcount calculator. You can download the calculator from this web address, metricnet.com/desktop staffing. And I'm going to go through a demonstration of how the calculator works so that you can see how simple it is to determine the right headcount for your desktop support or field services group. Now, the headcount calculator is an Excel format, so I'm going to open that up right now. And you'll see that when you open it up, we ask a series of questions around workload, work time per incident and service request, and the travel time per ticket. I'll explain these as I go through them. First question is, what is your average monthly incident volume? Let's assume 1,500. I'm making these numbers up, but I want to simply illustrate how the calculator works and how simple it is to right-size your desktop support or field service organization. Next question, what's your average monthly service request volume? Let's make up a number, 500. And by the way, incident volume is almost always higher than service request volume. It's not always true, but I would say 90 to 95% of the time, you're going to have more incidents than you have service requests. The next thing we ask for is the work time per incident. Please note that work time is very different than mean time to resolve. If I open up an incident at noon and close it at 4 p.m., that's a 4-hour MTTR. But chances are you weren't working on it for 4 full hours. You were probably only working on it for 20 or 25 minutes. So let's just put 20 minutes in here. But again, remember that this is not MTTR. This is the actual amount of time a technician spends working on that ticket. Now, service requests usually require more effort. I'm going to put 60 minutes in here, but the same caveat holds. We're not talking about a 60-minute MTTR. We're talking about 60 minutes of work time. The work time will always be less than or equal to the mean time to resolve. MTTR is also known as cycle time, but here we're only interested in the work time per ticket. Now, in desktop support and field services, there's typically travel time associated with the tickets. If you're co-located with your users, the travel time will be minimal. We do ask that question. Let's just assume that we are co-located with our users. You might be in the same building or on the same campus as those users, so your travel time is going to be shorter than if you are not co-located with your users. So let's just assume that our travel time per ticket is 10 minutes round trip. That is, every time we have an incident or a service request, we spend 10 minutes going to and from the site of the device or the user. Now, this is important. Travel time is a significant contributor to cost and efficiency in desktop support and field services. If you're not co-located with your users, the travel times are going to be longer. And if we're looking at field support or field services, generally that travel time is longer than it would be for desktop support. Notice that we never asked about the number of users here, because to my point earlier, the user headcount is irrelevant. What we care about is workload. And the workload generated by this particular user population is 1,500 incidents a month, 500 service requests a month, with an average work time of 20 minutes per incident, 60 minutes per service request, and an average travel time of 10 minutes per ticket. Now, we're well aware of the fact that many desktop support and field service groups don't track their work time per incident and service request, or don't track their travel time per ticket. But you can create an experiment, and over the course of a week, for example, you have each of your technicians track the amount of time they spend traveling to and from their tickets, track the amount of time they spend working on incidents, and track the amount of time they spend working on service requests. Just run the experiment for a week, but require that your technicians keep track of this information. And then at the end of the week, add it all up. How many incidents did you have? How many service requests did you have? What was the total work time for incidents? What was the total work time for service requests? And what was the total travel time? You can run the math, do the simple division, and figure out what your average work time is for an incident, what your average service request time is, and what your travel time per ticket is. Pretty simple. It may not be precise, but it is at least directionally accurate. It gets you in the ballpark of your work time and travel time per ticket. Now, as I was entering this data down below, our headcount calculator was determining the headcount that we would need for this workload. And here is what it came up with. We need almost 14 technicians for the workload that I've just outlined. We need approximately 2 supervisors or team leads. We need somebody doing dispatch and assignment, that is dispatching the tickets and assigning them to technicians. We need someone spending half their time on QA/QC, and we need someone spending part of their time as a manager. These fractional headcounts simply indicate that there is a need for dispatch and assignment, there is a need for QA/QC, and there is a need for overall management, but you probably don't need a full-time person in each one of those roles. But we wanted to acknowledge that there is a need for supervisors, dispatch and assignment personnel, QA/QC, and management personnel. One additional note on supervision and team leads: these supervisors generally don't spend full time in supervision. They're usually working supervisors, meaning that they also handle tickets in addition to providing supervision for the group. So I want to make that clear. But if we add this up, roughly 14 techs, 2 supervisors and team leads, a half a person spending their time on QA/QC and dispatch and assignment, and a quarter of a person spending their time managing the overall desktop support organization, we end up with about 17.5 FTEs. This would be a right-sized desktop support group. It's unlikely to be a field services group because you are co-located with your users, as we saw up here. But for a desktop support group, this is what a right-sized organization would look like: roughly 14 technicians, 2 supervisors, a half a person spending their time on dispatch and assignment, half a person spending their time on QA/QC, and then a manager spending a fourth of their time overseeing this. They would be splitting their duties typically with other activities. That's all there is to it. You enter some basic information on your incident and service request volume. You estimate or enter your best estimate of your work time per incident, your work time per service request, and you enter your best estimate for the travel time per ticket. And the headcount calculator gives you the right-sized figures for these 5 job categories: technician, supervisor, dispatch and assignment, QA/QC, and managers. Thanks for joining me. I hope you found this informative and insightful. And once again, if you're interested, you can download the desktop support staffing calculator from this web address, metricnet.com/desktop staffing. This is Jeff Rumberg from MetricNet. Thanks for joining me for our discussion today on right-sizing desktop support headcount and field services headcount.